I was gripping the steering wheel with a mix of frustration and desperation as my beat-up truck sputtered along the dark highway. My mind raced with worries about overdue bills, my boss's endless threats of layoffs, and the crushing weight of trying to keep my little sister in school. Life had been throwing punches, and I was barely staying on my feet. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a scream pierced through the quiet night. My headlights illuminated a woman running frantically along the road, her face pale with terror. She stumbled, clutching her side as if in pain, and glanced back as though someone was chasing her. Without thinking, I slammed the brakes, the tires screeching on the asphalt. My heart pounded as I jumped out of the truck. "Hey, are you okay?" I shouted, rushing toward her. "Help me," she gasped, her voice trembling. Her clothes were disheveled, and her face bore the faint trace of tears. "They're coming after me." I didn't have time to ask who they were. The distant roar of an engine tore through the silence, and headlights appeared on the horizon, growing closer by the second. My instincts screamed danger, but the fear in her eyes anchored me. "Get in," I barked, throwing open the passenger door. She hesitated for half a second, then scrambled into the truck. I jumped back into the driver's seat, slamming the door just as a black SUV roared into view, its high beams blinding us. The truck jolted forward as I floored the gas pedal. "Who are they? What's going on?" I asked, glancing at her as the SUV closed in behind us. Her hands trembled as she gripped the seat. They try to kidnap me. I managed to get away, but they're not going to stop." Her words sent a chill down my spine. My mind raced as I tried to process the situation. This wasn't some random accident. This was deliberate. But why? The SUV gained on us, its driver flashing the headlights aggressively. "Hold on," I muttered, swerving onto a dirt road that cut through a dense forest. The truck bounced and rattled, but the SUV stayed on our tail. "Do you know these people?" I pressed, trying to piece together the puzzle. She hesitated, her lips trembling as if she were debating how much to say. "I think so," she finally admitted, her voice barely audible over the roar of the engine. "But I didn't expect this. Why are they after you?" She took a shaky breath, her eyes glistening with tears. "Because I found out something I wasn't supposed to know. And if they catch me, I'm dead." Her words were like a punch to the gut. Whoever she was, whatever she knew, it was big. And now, by helping her, I'd painted a target on my own back. The chase went on for what felt like hours, the tension in the air thick enough to cut with a knife. Finally, I spotted an old, abandoned service station up ahead. I killed the lights and veered sharply off the road, pulling behind the building and cutting the engine. "Stay quiet," I whispered, motioning for her to keep her head down. The SUV roared past us, its tires kicking up a cloud of dust. My hands were still gripping the steering wheel tightly, knuckles white, as I listened to the sound of the engine fading into the distance. When I finally exhaled, it felt like I'd been holding my breath for hours. "We're safe. For now," I said, turning to face her. She looked at me with a mix of gratitude and fear. "Thank you. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't stopped." "Don't thank me yet," I said, my voice tinged with weariness. "Whoever those guys are, they're not going to give up. We need to figure out what to do next." She nodded, her expression resolute. "You've already done so much. I'll explain everything. But first, I need to know I can trust you." Her words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken implications. Whoever she was, whatever she knew, it had already turned my life upside down. And something told me this was only the beginning. I leaned back in the seat, running a hand through my hair. "Trust me? Lady, I just risked my neck for you without even knowing your name. You could start there." She hesitated, as if weighing the risk of revealing too much. Finally, she spoke. "My name's Lila. Lila Bennett." The name rang no bells, but her face still struck me as familiar, though I couldn't place where I'd seen her before. "Okay, Lila. I'm Jacob. Now, why don't you tell me who those guys were and why they're chasing you?" She glanced toward the windshield, her eyes scanning the dark forest. "They're part of an organization, a powerful one. I used to work for them until I found out what they were doing. Corruption, bribery, laundering money through charities, and worse." "Worse?" I prompted, feeling a chill run down my spine. Her voice dropped to a whisper. They were involved in trafficking. Human lives, Jacob. Innocent people. When I stumbled onto the evidence, I tried to report it. But instead of helping, the authorities warned them. I barely got away. I stared at her, my pulse hammering in my ears. This wasn't just some petty crime ring. This was massive. And now I was tangled in it. So, what's the plan? I asked. You've got evidence, right? Where is it? She hesitated again, her gaze flickering with uncertainty. It's complicated. The evidence is hidden. I was on my way to retrieve it when they found me. If I can get to it, we have a chance to bring them down. I nodded, my mind racing. This wasn't just about her anymore. If what she was saying was true, we were dealing with monsters who thought they were untouchable. And now I was caught in their crosshairs. All right, I said finally. Where's the evidence? She looked at me with a mix of determination and fear. It's in a storage locker in the city. But it's not going to be easy. They probably got people watching for me. Then we don't give them the chance, I said. We'll find a way to get there without them noticing. But first, we need to lie low and figure out our next move. She nodded, her shoulders sagging with exhaustion. Thank you. I mean it. Don't thank me yet, I muttered. We're not out of this mess. Not by a long shot. The service station turned out to have an old, rickety bathroom around the back. While Lila freshened up, I tried to piece together a plan. My truck wasn't exactly inconspicuous, and with every second we stayed in one place, the risk of being found grew. When she returned, she looked marginally better, still tired and shaken, but more composed. We need to leave this area, she said. They'll double back soon. I nodded. We'll take back roads, stay off the main highways. But before we go, I need to know, this organization, how far does their reach go? Are we talking local, national, or what? Her expression darkened. It's global, Jacob. They have allies in law enforcement, politics, even the media. If they want someone silenced, they'll stop at nothing. I let out a low whistle. Great. So we're up against an army. Not an army, she said, her voice firm. Just people who think they're untouchable. But they're not invincible. If we can get the evidence to the right people, we can expose them. And who are these right people? I asked skeptically. She hesitated. There's a journalist I trust. He's been working to uncover corruption for years. If I can get to him, he'll make sure the truth gets out. It wasn't a great plan, but it was better than nothing. All right, let's move. We drove through the night, taking winding back roads to avoid any potential pursuers. The silence in the truck was heavy, punctuated only by the hum of the engine. I couldn't stop glancing at Lila out of the corner of my eye. There was something about her, something that didn't quite add up. You're more than just someone who stumbled onto evidence, aren't you? I asked suddenly. She stiffened, her gaze flickering toward me. What do you mean? I mean, you don't look like someone who's been living on the run. You're too composed, too put together. Who are you really? For a moment, I thought she wasn't going to answer. Then she sighed, her shoulders slumping. You're right. I haven't been entirely honest. I used to be a part of that world. Not the criminal part, but the corporate side. My father owns one of the largest private equity firms in the country. My grip on the steering wheel tightened. That explained the familiarity. You're a billionaire's daughter. She corrected. I walked away from that life when I found out what was happening behind closed doors. My father. He's involved, Jacob. And he's one of the people they're protecting. Her revelation hit me like a freight train. My mind scrambled to process the weight of what she'd just admitted. Lila wasn't just someone who stumbled into danger. She was deeply embedded in it. Her own family was part of the machine she was trying to dismantle. So, you're telling me your father is one of the people running this operation? I asked, my voice laced with disbelief. Lila nodded, her expression grim. He's one of many. But he's powerful, Jacob. And ruthless. When I tried to confront him about what I found, he turned on me. That's when I realized how far this goes. He'd rather see me dead than let me expose him. I gripped the wheel tighter, my knuckles turning white. And you think this journalist can take him down? Even with the evidence. How do you fight someone with that kind of money and influence? She hesitated, her gaze fixed on the dark road ahead. It's not just about the evidence. It's about making it public in a way they can't bury. If we can show the world what they're doing, the backlash will be too big for them to contain. It's the only way. Her determination was undeniable, but the stakes were overwhelming. I wasn't just helping a stranger anymore. I was standing against a shadowy empire that could crush me like a bug. But there was no turning back now. I'd made my choice when I stopped to help her. We reached the outskirts of a small town just before dawn. The first streaks of sunlight painted the sky, but neither of us felt any relief. Exhaustion weighed heavy, but stopping wasn't an option. "Where's the storage locker?" I asked as we pulled into an empty parking lot behind a diner. "About an hour from here," Lila replied. "But we need to be careful. They'll be watching for me, and if they catch us, we won't get a second chance." I nodded. "We'll need a disguise. Something to throw them off." Lila glanced at her reflection in the side mirror, her disheveled appearance a stark contrast to the poised billionaire's daughter she must have once been. "Good idea. But I don't exactly have a wardrobe to choose from." "Stay here," I said, stepping out of the truck. "I'll take care of it." The diner wasn't open yet, but a thrift shop next door had just unlocked its doors. I grabbed a hoodie, a pair of sunglasses, and a baseball cap, along with some other cheap clothes for both of us. By the time I returned, Lila had dozed off, her head resting against the window. "Here," I said gently, handing her the disguise. "It's not much, but it'll do." She blinked awake, offering a faint smile. "Thank you, Jacob, for everything." "Don't mention it," I replied, though part of me wondered if I was in way over my head. The drive to the storage facility was tense. Every car that passed us felt like a threat, every turn an opportunity for an ambush. Lila was silent, her gaze locked on the road, as if willing us to stay invisible. Finally, we pulled into the lot. It was a rundown place on the edge of town, the kind of spot no one paid attention to. Perfect for hiding something important. "This is it," Lila said, her voice barely above a whisper. We parked in the far corner, out of sight from the main road. Lila led the way to a row of metal doors, stopping in front of one that looked no different from the others. She pulled out a key from her pocket, her hands trembling slightly as she unlocked it. Inside was a plain cardboard box sitting on a metal shelf. She grabbed it and turned to me. "This is it. Everything we need to expose them." I didn't get a chance to ask what was inside. The sound of tires screeching outside froze us both in place. My heart sank as I realized we'd been followed. "They're here," Lila whispered, her face pale with fear. I slammed the door shut and locked it from the inside. "We need a plan fast," I said, my mind racing. Lila opened the box, pulling out a small flash drive and a stack of documents. "This is what matters," she said, holding up the drive. "The rest is backup, but this is what will take them down." Footsteps echoed outside, heavy and deliberate. The door rattled as someone tried the handle. "Lila Bennett," a deep voice called out. "We know you're in there. Open the door, and we'll make this easy for you." Her eyes widened in panic. "That's him, one of my father's men." I grabbed a rusty pipe lying in the corner, my makeshift weapon against whatever was coming. "Stay behind me," I said. The door burst open with a deafening crash, and two men stepped inside. They were big, armed, and looked like they meant business. "Hand it over," one of them growled, his eyes locking on the flash drive in Lila's hand. "Over my dead body," I said, stepping between them and her. The tension in the room was suffocating, but I refused to back down. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about standing up to the people who thought they could do whatever they wanted without consequences. The first man lunged at me with the force of a linebacker, his fists swinging wildly. I ducked just in time, my heart pounding like a drum as I sidestepped his attack. Grabbing the rusty pipe from the floor, I swung with everything I had, connecting with his shoulder. He staggered but didn't go down. The second man wasn't as direct. He stood back, his eyes sharp and calculating. Then he spoke in a chillingly calm voice. "Give us what we came for, and this doesn't have to get messy." "Messy?" I scoffed, stepping protectively in front of Lila. "You're already breaking and entering. Seems a little late to play nice." The first man recovered, lunging again. This time, I braced myself, using his momentum against him to shove him into a shelving unit. He crashed into it with a loud thud, scattering boxes and dust everywhere. Lila clutched the flash drive tightly, her eyes darting between me and the intruders. "Jacob, we have to go," she urged, panic rising in her voice. "Not yet," I growled, swinging the pipe again to keep the second man at bay. But he was quicker than his partner, sidestepping my attack with ease. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps outside caught everyone's attention. It was distant, but unmistakable. More reinforcements were coming. I cursed under my breath, realizing we were running out of time. "Take the drive and run," I shouted at Lila, throwing her the keys to the truck. "I'll hold them off." "I'm not leaving you," she shot back, her voice cracking with emotion. "Go," I barked, my tone leaving no room for argument. Reluctantly, she turned and bolted for the door. The second man tried to follow, but I swung the pipe with all my strength, forcing him to retreat. By the time I burst out of the storage unit, Lila had already started the truck. She skidded to a stop just long enough for me to dive into the passenger seat, and then we were off, the tires screeching as we tore out of the lot. "They're going to follow us," she said, glancing nervously in the rearview mirror. "Let them try," I muttered, gripping the dashboard as she swerved onto the main road. "We'll lose them." Sure enough, a black SUV roared out of the storage facility moments later, its headlights like twin daggers cutting through the early morning fog. "Do you know these roads?" I asked, my voice tense. "Not really," she admitted, "but I think there's a bridge up ahead. If we can make it across, we might lose them." I nodded, scanning the rearview mirror. The SUV was gaining on us, its engine roaring like a predator closing in on its prey. I felt a surge of adrenaline as I realized just how close they were. "Faster," I urged. "I'm trying," she shot back, her knuckles white as she gripped the wheel. The bridge came into view, a narrow, rickety structure that looked like it hadn't been maintained in years. It was a gamble, but we didn't have a choice. "Hold on," Lila warned, gunning the engine. The truck roared onto the bridge, the wooden planks creaking ominously beneath its weight. The SUV followed, its headlights glaring like an accusation. Halfway across, the bridge groaned under the combined weight of both vehicles, and for a terrifying moment, I thought it might collapse. "Just a little further," I encouraged, my eyes fixed on the other side. The moment we reached solid ground, Lila jerked the wheel hard to the left, sending the truck careening onto a dirt path that disappeared into a dense forest. The SUV hesitated at the edge of the bridge, its driver clearly reluctant to risk the same maneuver. "We did it," Lila breathed, her voice shaking with relief. "Not yet," I cautioned, scanning the road ahead. "We bought ourselves some time, but they'll find another way around. We need to keep moving." We drove in silence for a while, the tension between us as thick as the morning mist. Finally, Lila broke the silence. "Jacob, thank you. I don't think I would have made it this far without you." I glanced at her, seeing the sincerity in her eyes. "You don't have to thank me. Just tell me we have a real shot at bringing these guys down." "We do," she said, her voice firm. "The evidence on this drive is enough to expose everything. We just need to get it to someone who can use it." "And who's that?" I asked. "A journalist," she replied. "He's been investigating my father's dealings for years. If anyone can blow this open, it's him." I nodded, though a part of me couldn't help but feel skeptical. It sounded too simple, too easy. But what other choice did we have? The sun had fully risen by the time we reached the outskirts of the city. The tension in the truck was palpable, both of us acutely aware that every second we spent out in the open was a risk. Lila's voice broke the silence. "The journalist's office is in Midtown. He works out of a small building, keeps a low profile to avoid drawing attention. Do you think he'll meet us?" I asked. "If your father has connections everywhere, he could be in just as much danger as we are." "He'll meet us," she said confidently. "This is his life's work. He's been trying to expose people like my father for years." I nodded, tightening my grip on the wheel. "All right, let's make it quick." We parked a few blocks away from the address Lila provided, leaving the truck behind to avoid drawing attention. The city streets were bustling, but that didn't mean we were safe. I scanned every face we passed, looking for any sign of danger. "This way," Lila said, leading me down a narrow alley. At the end stood a nondescript building with a single door. She knocked twice, then 3 times in quick succession. The door opened a crack, and a pair of sharp eyes peered out. "Lila," a deep voice asked. "It's me," she replied, "and I've got the evidence." The door opened fully, revealing a wiry man in his 40s with a grizzled beard and a wary expression. He ushered us inside quickly, bolting the door behind us. The journalist, Mark, didn't waste time on pleasantries. "You brought it?" he asked, his tone urgent. Lila handed him the flash drive. "Everything's on here. Financial records, communications, even video evidence." Mark's eyes widened as he examined the drive. "If this is what you say it is, this could blow the lid off the entire operation." "It is," she said firmly. "But we're running out of time. They're after us, and they won't stop until they get this back." Mark nodded, his mind already racing. "I have secure contacts in the media. We'll release it all at once. Press, TV, online. They won't be able to suppress it." "Good," I said, relief washing over me. "But what about us? They're not going to stop just because the story's out." Mark hesitated, then motioned for us to follow him. He led us to a hidden room at the back of his office, stocked with supplies and equipment. "You can stay here for now. It's not much, but it's safe. Once the story breaks, they'll have bigger problems than chasing you." The next few days were a blur. Mark worked tirelessly to verify the evidence and prepare the story for release. Lila and I stayed hidden, the weight of the situation pressing down on us. Despite the danger, there was a growing sense of hope. For the first time, it felt like we had a real chance of fighting back. The night before the story was set to break, Lila and I sat together in the small room, sharing a rare moment of quiet. "Do you think this will work?" she asked, her voice tinged with both hope and fear. "It has to," I said. "If we've come this far, we can't let them win." She smiled faintly, her hand brushing against mine. "Thank you, Jacob, for everything. I don't think I would have made it without you." "You don't have to thank me," I replied. "You're the brave one here. I'm just doing what anyone should." The next morning, the story went live. News outlets across the country picked it up, the shocking revelations dominating headlines. Lila's father's empire began to crumble under the weight of public outrage and legal scrutiny. But the fight wasn't over. Even as the world turned against them, the organization fought back, using every tool at their disposal to discredit the story. Threats poured in, and the danger didn't disappear overnight. Mark arranged for Lila and me to disappear, setting us up with new identities in a safe place far from the city. It wasn't the life I'd imagined, but it was a fresh start. Months passed, and the dust began to settle. The organization's leaders were arrested, and Lila's father faced trial. The evidence we'd risked everything to deliver had done its job, and the world was finally paying attention. As for Lila and me, we built a new life together. The danger had forged a bond between us that couldn't be broken. We didn't have much, but we had each other, and that was enough. One day, as we sat on the porch of our small house, Lila turned to me, her eyes shining. "Do you ever regret stopping that night? Picking me up on the side of the road?" I shook my head, a smile tugging at my lips. "Not for a second. You saved me as much as I saved you." She laughed softly, leaning her head against my shoulder. "We make a good team, and for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. The road ahead was uncertain, but as long as we faced it together, I knew we could handle anything."